You are not bad at math. You were probably trained to study it the wrong way. Most students treat math like information. Read the page, highlight the formula, watch the video, feel that little moment of, "Oh, I get it," then the test comes. And everything falls apart. Because seeing math is not the same as owning math. A lot of students confuse familiarity with mastery. They recognize the steps, recognize the symbols, recognize the answer path, and mistake that for skill. But if the numbers change, the wording shifts, or the pressure goes up, they freeze. The core opening of the original script makes exactly this distinction. Top students do not stop at understanding. They make math automatic by doing it again and again, until it becomes second nature. If you can't reproduce it from a blank page, you don't own it. That is the difference. The stronger students are not just smarter, they practice differently. Solve it once, then solve it again without looking, then explain it in 30 seconds like you are teaching someone younger than you. Now the idea starts sticking. Because math is not built by exposure, it is built by retrieval, pressure, repetition, and variation. So this video is not going to tell you to just practice more. That advice is too weak. This is about changing how you practice. I'll show you a simple loop attempt. Explain, vary, repeat. Once you learn that loop, math stops feeling like something you almost understand. It starts becoming something you can actually use. The first real shift is this: stop studying math like a viewer. Start training it like a skill. A lot of students spend hours around math without actually getting better at math. They read worked examples. They watch someone else solve it. They underline formulas. They feel productive. But none of that forces the brain to perform. And performance is the whole game. This is where stronger students separate themselves. They do not just solve a problem once and move on. They stay with it longer than most people are willing to. Solve it one way, then solve it again a different way. Then solve it one more time and ask, what is this problem really testing? That is how the concept stops being a trick and starts becoming a tool. Take something simple like a quadratic equation. Most students plug it into one formula, get the answer, and feel done. But deeper practice looks different. Factor it. Use the quadratic formula. Complete the square. Now compare the methods. Which one was faster? Which one showed the structure more clearly? Which one would still work if the numbers changed? That kind of practice builds flexibility. And flexibility is what makes you dangerous in math. Because on a real test, problems do not always show up wearing the same clothes. The numbers change. The wording changes. Sometimes the whole question is designed to make you panic. If you only learned one path, you break. If you trained multiple paths, you adapt. That is why passive learning feels good but fails under pressure. It gives you recognition. Active practice gives you control. And once you stop asking, "Do I understand this?" and start asking, "Can I solve this 3 different ways?" without help, your level changes fast. Here is where most students lose half their progress. They make a mistake and move on too fast. They erase it. They fix the answer. They keep going. Then 3 days later, the same mistake shows up again. That is not bad luck. It is bad review. The students who get dangerous at math do something most people never do. They keep a record of their errors. Not on random paper, not buried in old homework. In one dedicated notebook. Problem on one side, mistake on the other. What went wrong? A rushed sign, a weak algebra step, wrong formula, misread question. Good method, bad execution. Then rewrite the correct solution and solve one similar problem immediately. That last part matters, because if you only write down why you were wrong, you understand the mistake. If you correct it and solve a similar problem right away, you start rewiring the pattern. That is how errors stop being embarrassing and start becoming useful. The original script pushes this exact mindset. Mistakes are not treated as failure, but as feedback to study, analyze, and review, instead of erase and forget. Most students practice what they already know. Top students study where they break. That is why they improve faster. They do not just collect answers, they collect patterns. And once you start doing that, math gets less emotional and more mechanical. Less, "I'm bad at this." More, "I know exactly what keeps going wrong." That is a completely different level of control. If you want the exact mistake page format, comment 1. Here is the part most students resist: repetition. Not because it does not work, because it looks boring, but boring is exactly why it wins. A lot of students here don't memorize, understand. That sounds smart, and it is only half true. Because understanding once is not enough. If you understand a formula today but still hesitate tomorrow, freeze next week, and blank out under pressure, then the idea never became usable. It stayed fragile. The stronger approach is different. First, understand it. Then repeat it until it becomes automatic. That is the shift. You do not just memorize symbols. You break the formula apart. Where did it come from? What is it actually doing? Why does this step exist? What changes if the numbers change? Now you are not copying. You are building the pattern. And once you understand the pattern, you stop treating repetition like punishment. You use it to remove hesitation. Solve the problem. Then solve a similar one. Then solve another without looking. Then do it again tomorrow. That is how your brain stops panicking when the question shows up in a different form. Because repetition does something most students never appreciate. It turns effort into speed. And speed is not just about going faster. It is about freeing your mind. When the basics are automatic, your brain has room to think, to catch traps, to compare methods, to stay calm under pressure. That is why top students do not look calm because math is easy. They look calm because they have already seen the pattern enough times that the problem does not feel new anymore. Here is where a lot of students break. They only practice math when nothing is pushing back. Notebook open. No timer. No urgency. Plenty of time to pause, restart, and slowly figure things out. Then the real test shows up. Now the clock is moving. Your brain gets louder. You rush steps you normally know. Easy mistakes start appearing out of nowhere. That is the gap. Math in practice mode and math under time are not the same skill. One is understanding, the other is execution. This is why strong students do something most people avoid. They train with a clock before the exam forces them to, not to create panic. To make pressure, feel familiar. Set a short round. Pick one topic set, fractions, algebra, geometry, not mixed at first. Aim for about 70% accuracy. That matters more than pretending you can do everything perfectly at full speed. And if that still feels too hard, lower the entry point. Start smaller, fewer questions, same structure, then scale. That is how you build performance without wrecking your confidence. Because the timer is only half the method. Then, you review the misses. That's where the improvement lives. After the round, do not review everything. Review only the mistakes. Did you rush misread the problem? Forget a basic step. Freeze on setup, drop a negative sign. Then log the pattern. That is what turns timed practice into real progress instead of just stress. The rule is simple. One short round, one topic. Aim for 70% accuracy. Then fix the errors. That is how math stops being something you only understand in a quiet room and starts becoming something you can actually deliver when it counts. Here is where math stops being something you almost understand and starts becoming something you can actually teach it. Not after you feel fully ready, not after you become good enough, right after you study it. Because the second you try to explain a concept out loud, the truth shows up. You either know it, or you realize you were leaning on the notes the whole time. A lot of students think learning ends when they finish the chapter. The stronger students do one more thing: they become the teacher. They explain the idea to a classmate, to a younger sibling, to an empty chair, even to an imaginary student if nobody is around. And the moment they do that, the weak spots light up. You start explaining a step and suddenly hear yourself say, "Wait, I don't actually know why that works." Good. That is the moment real learning starts, because now the gap is visible, and visible gaps can be fixed. So use a simple rule after every chapter. Do a 3-0-second teach back. No notes, no reading, just your own words. What is the concept? When do you use it? What are the steps? Where do students usually mess it up? If you can explain it simply, your understanding is getting real. If you cannot, even better. Now you know exactly what to fix. Then prove it. Solve one new problem without looking. That is how studying stops being recognition and turns into real mastery. This is where most students lose the race before the exam even starts. They rely on intensity instead of consistency. One long session, 3 days off, panic the night before, then another promise to take math seriously next week. That cycle feels productive. It is not, because math does not reward random effort. It rewards repeated contact. The stronger students are not always the ones doing heroic study sessions. A lot of the time, they are the ones touching math every day, even briefly. 20 minutes, every day. No drama, no last-minute rescue mission. That is what changes the brain. When math shows up daily, it stops feeling like a threat. It stops feeling like a special event. It becomes part of your routine, and routine is what turns effort into identity. That is the deeper shift here. You stop being someone who is trying to get better at math. You become someone who does math every day. That sounds small. It is not, because once the habit is daily, resistance drops. The page feels less heavy, the subject feels less emotional, the brain stops treating every session like a fight. And this kills one of the biggest lies students believe, that math success belongs to the naturally gifted. It does not. Genius is overrated. Systems win. A daily block, a mistake log, a review loop, a topic set under time, a teach back after each chapter. That is how results are built. Not through one perfect week, through a structure strong enough to survive ordinary days. And once your system gets stronger than your excuses, math starts changing fast. So here is the truth: after all of this, math is not a talent test. It is a system test. Talent is a head start. Systems are the finish line. That is what most students never get taught. The students who win are not always the ones who looked impressive at the beginning. They are usually the ones who built a better loop. They do the problem. They test it under time. They review the errors. They teach it back. Then they repeat. That is how skill gets built. Not through random motivation. Not through one heroic study session. Not through waiting to feel ready. Through structure. And once you really understand that, math stops feeling mysterious. It stops feeling like something other people were born for. It becomes trainable, repeatable, buildable. That should change the way you see your own ceiling. Because if progress comes from a loop, then improvement is no longer luck. It is a process you can run. So keep it simple. Build the loop, attempt timed, set review errors, teach it back, repeat. You do not need to believe in yourself every day. You don't need to believe in yourself. Believe in the loop. That is how ordinary students become dangerous. Not by becoming different overnight. By doing the right things often enough that the subject stops feeling unfamiliar and starts feeling like theirs. And if you want me to turn this into a simple daily 1 5-minute math system, comment 1 and I'll give you the template.